Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and unearth the most valuable insights.
Today we're jumping into a deep dive on excerpts from a book that really shook things up when it came out, challenging the whole idea of work, life, and success as we know it. The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, it definitely made some waves. We've got a fascinating stack of ideas pulled from it for this deep dive, everything from radically questioning the status quo to leveraging automation and, literally designing a lifestyle that looks nothing like the traditional 9-to-5 grind.
Exactly. And it's definitely not about just getting rich quick, right? It's about a fundamentally different approach to how you structure your time and energy so you can live more fully now.
So our mission here is to pull out the core strategies and, I guess, the surprising perspectives that might just make you rethink your own path to work and freedom.
Right. And it all starts with confronting what the book calls the deferred life plan. You know the one.
Oh, yeah. The default setting for most people working flat out, often at something maybe you don't love for 40 years or more.
With the promise that someday, usually way off in retirement, you'll finally get to live, travel, or pursue your passions.
And there's that great Mark Twain quote the author uses right up front. Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect. Makes you immediately question that standard path.
It really does. It frames what we call the common sense rules of the real world, not as these fixed laws, but as a fragile collection of socially reinforced illusions.
That reframing is pretty critical, isn't it? That's the first step.
Absolutely. And it introduces this concept of the new rich, or NR.
Mm-hmm.
The insight here is that this isn't necessarily about being a multimillionaire in the traditional sense.
Right. Their wealth isn't just dollars.
Exactly. It's measured in time and freedom. Their goal is lifestyle design, intentionally structuring their life to have the experiences they want, rather than just accepting whatever default comes our way.
And a really compelling piece of that is the idea of mini retirements, which isn't just taking a couple of weeks off.
No, not at all. These are recurring, extended periods, months at a time, maybe of travel, learning, or pursuing passions, scattered throughout your working life, not just piled up at the very end.
It's like sampling that deferred life plan reward before you've put in the 40 years.
Precisely. And the book gets into the surprising financial realities of how this is possible, especially through something called geographic arbitrage.
Ah, yes. Living where your money simply goes a lot further.
Mm-hmm. Living like a rock star abroad, as the book puts it, on potentially a fraction of typical domestic expenses.
Okay, that sounds amazing, but almost too good to be true. If it's that accessible, what's stopping everyone?
Well, the book's pretty direct about that. The answer is fear.
Fear. Okay.
Yeah, that's the primary barrier. Fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, and crucially, this illusion that quitting a job or changing direction is some kind of permanent, irreversible disaster.
Right, like you can never go back.
Exactly. And there's that analogy used, seeing your potential future in someone who's been on the conventional path for 15, 20 years, like the fat man in the red BMW, and being terrified that that's where you're headed if you don't change course.
That feeling can be totally paralyzing.
It can. And the antidote proposed is this really powerful practical exercise called fear setting.
Fear setting, not positive thinking then.
No, it's almost the opposite. It's about defining the absolute worst case scenario if you actually pursue your dream or make that big change. You literally write down everything you fear could go wrong.
Okay.
Then you analyze the likelihood of each of those worst outcomes actually happening. And finally, critically, how reversible is it? Can you recover? Can you get back to, a reasonable baseline?
That makes so much sense. Writing it down takes that big, scary cloud of anxiety and makes it concrete.
Yeah.
Something you can actually look at and dissect.
Exactly. It's like the Hans Keeling paragliding story mentioned he feared jumping off the mountain. But facing that fear, defining it, was the path to finding freedom on the other side.
That Yoda quote nails it. Named must your fear be before banish it you can.
Right. And the book strongly emphasizes that just analyzing isn't enough. Action is crucial. Benjamin Disraeli is quoted saying, "Action may not always bring happiness, but there is no happiness without action."
So it poses that direct question to you, the listener. What are you putting off out of fear?
Yeah, and it even suggests committing to doing just one feared thing daily, small steps.
Another concept related to breaking free from that conventional thinking is what it calls adventure deficit disorder, or ADD.
It connects to that societal pressure we all feel to just be realistic.
Right. Don't dream too big.
Exactly. And the book suggests we stop asking, what do I want? Because that often leads to comfortable, safe, conventional answers. Instead, ask, what would excite me?
Excitement becomes the compass, even if it feels unrealistic.
That's the idea. Shifting from desire to excitement as the main driver is a powerful reframing in itself. And all of this leads into the core framework for actually doing this.
Which is the DEAL acronym.
It's exactly DEAL. It's the step-by-step process outlined for becoming a member of the new rich. Definition, elimination, automation, and liberation.
Okay, DEAL. Now, the book notes a slight twist depending on your situation, right? For entrepreneurs, it's typically DEAL, but for employees, it's DL.
Yeah, DLA. That's a really important distinction. Think about it. For an employee, if you apply the principles of elimination and automation before liberation, meaning before you escape the physical office environment, what's likely to happen?
Yeah, you just get really, really good at your job and maybe get more work piled on.
Exactly. You become incredibly productive and efficient, and your boss just sees someone who can handle more. You've automated tasks, maybe, but you haven't automated yourself out of that constant time commitment.
So liberation, getting out of the traditional 9-to-5 structure, has to come earlier in the process for employees to really get the benefits.
Right, to avoid just becoming a super efficient cog in the same machine.
Okay, got it. So let's dive into D definition.
This is where you really challenge those fundamental assumptions, turning that common sense we talked about upside down. It's about defining the rules and objectives of this new game you're playing.
Setting the stage.
It introduces concepts like relative wealth, valuing flexibility, mobility, and time as much as, or maybe even more than, just having a high income. And eustress. Positive stress.
Yeah, that good stress you get from engaging in challenging, fulfilling activities, not the draining kind.
So definition is really about establishing this whole new way of thinking about life and work.
Okay, establishing the new mindset, new goals. Then comes E, elimination.
Elimination is perhaps one of the most immediately actionable steps for many people. It's about ditching the old notion of time management, which often just means cramming more activity into your day.
Yeah, just being busy.
Right. Instead, it's about focusing ruthlessly on results and productivity, getting more meaningful things done in significantly less time.
And this section introduces two classic, really powerful principles that work together. The first is the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, the observation by Vilfredo Pareto that broadly 80% of the consequences flow from 20% of the causes.
And the book applies this everywhere, right?
Very much. 80% of your results from 20% of your efforts or time. 80% of profits from 20% of products or customers. The book even notes this ratio can be way more skewed sometimes, like 90-10 or even 9-5.
The key insight here isn't just knowing the rule, though. It's applying it ruthlessly, asking, what 20% of inputs, tasks, customers, projects, maybe even people are causing 80% of my desired outcomes?
Or conversely, 80% of your problems and unhappiness.
And applying it to people. That can sound pretty harsh. The book talks about maybe having to fire certain friends.
Yeah, that definitely raises eyebrows. It's framed as an extreme application of the elimination principle, though. If someone is consistently dragging you down, consuming disproportionate emotional energy,
far outweighing any positive input,
then it's viewed as an inefficiency you might need to address to protect your well-being and focus. It's applying 80-20 to happiness, essentially.
Okay, puts it in context. So that's Pareto. What's the second principle?
That's Parkinson's law. Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion.
Yeah. Give someone a week for a 2-hour task.
And somehow it takes the whole week. Given 2 hours, maybe an impending deadline, and they'll probably find a way to get it done.
And the real power is using them together.
Absolutely. That's the core strategy here. Use 80-20 to identify the absolutely critical 20% of tasks that drive 80% of your results. Then apply Parkinson's law by setting aggressive, short, defined start and end times for only those critical tasks.
Because without those deadlines,
the unimportant stuff will always creep in and expand to fill all your available time. It just happens.
And part of protecting that focus time is the concept of the low information diet.
Yes, deliberately cultivating selective ignorance. It's the idea that, in today's world, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention, as Herbert Simon put it. There's just too much noise.
So limit the news, avoid random web surfing, that kind of thing.
Exactly. The author shares his own practice of significantly limiting news consumption, not reading newspapers, except, famously, for a Diet Pepsi discount coupon. It even links to Einstein's view that reading too much can lead to lazy thinking because you're just consuming, not processing or creating.
You're intentionally reducing the static to hear the signal. What about interruptions? Email, phone calls.
The book gives very practical tips here. Things like streamlining phone greetings so you don't waste time, turning off those constant email pop-up notifications.
Those are the worst.
Right. And using structured if-then language in emails to prevent endless back and forth. So instead of, can you meet at 4 p.m., maybe say, I can meet at 4 p.m. If that doesn't work, please suggest 2 alternative times that do. Cuts down the email chain.
Batching tasks is another key strategy here.
Right, handling similar tasks together. Checking email, voicemails, making calls only at set times, maybe twice a day, maybe even less. The book actually suggests you test the frequency.
Test it.
Well, the author tried batching email just once a week. Then he calculated if the potential cost of problems caused by delayed responses, like, say, a lost sale, was less than the value of the time he saved not constantly checking email.
So quantify the value of your freed up time versus the potential downside.
Exactly. If saving 10 hours of scattered email checks is worth, say, $200 to you in terms of focus and productivity, and delaying one response maybe costs $80 in potential profit, that's still a net gain. You have to value your focused time.
For a lot of people, though, putting these elimination principles into practice means getting comfortable with something really difficult and saying no.
Absolutely. That's a huge hurdle. The book addresses this head on and suggests a kind of comfort challenge. They revisit the Terrible Twos challenge.
Which is?
For 2 days, deliberately say no to all non-essential requests, anything that won't actually get you fired. The point isn't to be difficult, it's just to get comfortable with that feeling of politely declining so you can protect your time for the important stuff you identified with 80/20.
It reinforces that doing less meaningless work isn't laziness.
Not at all. It's strategic focus. It's effectiveness over sheer activity.
Okay, that makes sense. Less doing, more effectiveness. Right, moving on to A, automation.
This step is all about putting your income generation on autopilot as much as possible. While geographic arbitrage helps lower living costs, the real core of automation here is outsourcing.
Leveraging other people to do tasks, freeing up your time.
Exactly. This is where virtual assistants, or VAs, come in big time. The book lists a huge range of things you can potentially outsource, not just typical business tasks like accounting or managing mailing lists.
Personal stuff, too.
Yeah, like arranging parties, sending birthday cards, researching travel, charting a diet plan, even helping you find a job. Pretty much anything that doesn't absolutely require your unique expertise or physical presence.
But the classic objection always pops up here. It's cheaper if I just do it myself.
And the book tackles that directly. The goal isn't necessarily doing the task at the absolute lowest hourly cost. It's about freeing up your time, which is your most valuable asset, to focus on high-value activities only you can do.
So the metric isn't cost per hour.
It's cost per completed task relative to the value of your time. If it takes you, say, 5 hours to do a task you could outsource for $50, but in those same 5 hours, you could have generated $500 worth of value doing something else.
Then doing it yourself didn't save you $50. It actually cost you $450 in lost opportunity.
Precisely. It completely flips the script on how you value your time.
So VAs basically bring that sort of eccentric billionaire behavior within reach for anyone, like the Howard Hughes cheeseburger story.
Right, offloading anything that's just a time sink, allowing you to focus.
All right.
The ultimate vision in this section is owning businesses that acquire very little, maybe even none, of your time to run day to day.
Is that realistic?
Well, the book points out that many large, successful companies already outsource core functions: manufacturing, customer service, shipping. The infrastructure exists. You can often rent these capabilities instead of building them from scratch.
And central to this is having a product or service that kind of sells itself, what the book calls the muse.
Yes, the muse. And the core strategy for creating one is crucial. Find demand first, then create or source the product to fill it.
Don't build it and hope they come.
Exactly. It is vastly easier to fill existing demand than to try and create it out of thin air. The advice is to find a niche market with an identifiable need or pain point. Ideally, be a member of that market yourself so you genuinely understand it.
And you don't need to fully build the whole product before you even know if anyone wants it.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
The book details methods for testing market demand before investing heavily in production. Things like running low-cost ads for an imaginary book related to your product idea, using Google AdWords to gauge search volume and competition.
Or even dry testing. What's that?
That's where you set up a basic web page with a simulated buy now button for your product even before it exists, just to measure click-through interest. How many people actually try to buy it? It gives you real data on demand, like the Match-Schmidt process mentioned.
Pricing is also a key component here.
Yes, and the book advocates for premium pricing, generally.
Higher prices. Why?
Couple reasons. One, obviously higher profit margins. The book suggests targeting maybe 8-10x markup on physical goods, or even 20-50x for information products. But also, counterintuitively, higher paying customers often tend to be lower maintenance. They value the solution and cause fewer headaches.
Huh. Interesting. And the Brain Quicken example showed how that high margin was crucial for survival.
Yeah, it gave them the buffer needed to handle unexpected business challenges. Low margins leave you vulnerable.
Information products seem particularly suited to this Muse model.
They really are. They check a lot of the boxes. Extremely low startup costs, rapid creation or manufacturing time, often less than a week, and the potential for very high markups. The example of that low-budget how-to DVD for storage facility owners is perfect, targeting a very specific underserved niche with valuable info.
Okay, so you found a niche, tested demand, maybe created an info product. How do you get attention for your Muse?
The book offers practical steps to quickly establish yourself as an expert in your niche, even if you're new. This helps gain credibility and media attention.
Like what?
Things like joining relevant trade organizations, summarizing the top books or articles in the field, giving free introductory seminars or webinars, writing articles for trade publications, even if you have to interview actual experts to write them, and using services like ProfNet, where journalists actively look for sources.
It even gets into tactics for contacting difficult-to-reach people, like CEOs or celebrities.
Yeah, the advice there is pretty specific. Have a single, clear, well-researched question. Be politely assertive, don't waste their time, and practice your approach. Don't just assume they're inaccessible.
And bold guarantees are highlighted as a way to overcome customer hesitation, right?
Yes. Strong guarantees can significantly reduce the perceived risk for the buyer. Examples like the infamous the C-Lub car theft guarantee, $500 deductible paid, or BodyQuick's 110% guarantee are used.
The idea being that if your product genuinely delivers, most people are honest and won't abuse the guarantee.
Exactly. A bold guarantee signals confidence and can dramatically increase sales if the product holds up.
So all of this automation work, the VAs, the Muse, the systems, aims to build what the book calls a self-correcting business architecture.
Right. The remote control CEO concept. The goal is to design a business system run largely by outsourcers and automated reports and rules, where you are no longer the bottleneck required for every single decision or task.
Removing yourself from the day-to-day operations.
Precisely. The author contrasts his early days with brain quicken, constantly interrupted, putting out fires with the later automated structure, where he was physically removed, and just reviewed key metrics reported by outsourcers according to preset rules.
What does that basic infrastructure look like? What do you need?
Well, you need things like a merchant account to process credit card payments, maybe using fulfillment centers to handle inventory, packaging, and shipping, and potentially using call centers or even simple IVR phone systems to handle customer inquiries professionally without you being involved.
The key seems to be setting really clear rules and procedures.
Absolutely critical. Clear rules, procedures, FAQs, email templates for outsourcers so they can handle 95% of situations without needing your input. You define the process, they execute it.
And there's that interesting point about how offering fewer choices can actually boost sales sometimes.
Ah, yeah. The art of undecision. The example used is Joseph Sugarman's ad test in the Wall Street Journal. He found that offering just one specific model of a watch outsold, offering 9 different watches by something like 6-to-1.
Because too many options lead to paralysis.
Exactly. Analysis paralysis. Limiting choices can simplify the decision for the customer and often result in more sales. Paradoxically.
Okay, which brings us finally to L liberation.
This is the final step, and it's particularly crucial for employees. It's about physically removing yourself from the traditional work environment and structure, breaking free from that assumption that you have to be in a specific place from 9 to 5 to be productive.
And for employees, the book emphasizes applying those elimination principles first is key to achieving liberation.
Right. Because by becoming incredibly productive and results-oriented, using things like 80-20 and Parkinson's law, you significantly increase your value to the company. That gives you leverage.
Leverage to negotiate. What, pay raises and remote work?
Exactly. Both. But especially for proposing a remote work arrangement, you've proven you can deliver results, often more efficiently than others.
So what's the suggested pitch to the boss for going remote?
The book lays out a strategy. Build up your proven value first. Then propose a trial period for remote work, maybe just 1 or 2 days a week initially. It even suggests offering a temporary pay cut during the trial, if needed, just to lower their perceived risk.
Make it easy for them to say yes to a trial.
Right. Let the boss feel like they're collaborating on the plan. And then this is absolutely key. You have to over-deliver on productivity during that remote trial period. Track your results meticulously and show quantifiable proof that you are more, not less, effective working remotely.
Like the HP tech support case study mentioned.
Yeah, showing it can work even in roles that seem tied to an office. You need to make the business case based on results.
And there are specific tools mentioned that make this remote living and working more feasible today.
Definitely. Services like Earth-class mail, which will scan your physical postal mail and email it to you anywhere in the world. Things like Green BiPhone for processing checks electronically, and communication tools like Skype in, or just getting local SIM cards when you travel abroad to handle phone calls cheaply and maintain a local presence.
Even with all these strategies and tools, actually leaving a conventional job can still feel incredibly scary for people. Pulling the trigger.
Oh, absolutely. The book acknowledges it feels like pulling off a Band-Aid. But it also offers reassurance. It argues that most career changes are far more reversible than we tend to imagine.
Quitting isn't necessarily permanent.
Not at all. You can often get another job, maybe even a better one. It encourages you to test your assumptions about what employers really value often, its performance and results, more than just tenure or having a perfectly linear resume.
And the case studies are there to show it's possible.
Yeah, examples like the Subway franchisee who escaped the work for work's sake trap, or the art lover who managed to negotiate remote work and ended up doubling their salary and productivity. They're meant to show it's not just theory.
Okay, so let's say you've done it. You've applied deal, you've maybe automated some income, achieved liberation, you have the time and location freedom. What happens next? Because that's not the end of the story.
No, definitely not. That's where filling the void comes in. It addresses the crucial question of what you actually do after you've successfully subtracted the conventional 40-plus hour work week from your life.
And the book points out something kind of surprising. This transition can be really challenging, especially for driven, high-achieving people.
It really can. Moving suddenly from a state of constant busyness, what the book calls time famine, to having vast amounts of unstructured time abundance can lead to boredom, a lack of clear direction, maybe even a kind of existential panic for some people.
You suddenly have to face the big questions.
Pretty much. Like, what's the meaning of it all? The book's perspective, though, isn't that you need to sit around navel-gazing to find some preordained meaning. It's more that you need to create meaning through pursuing fulfilling dreams or engaging in purposeful activities.
So those mini retirements we talked about aren't just about relaxing on a beach somewhere.
They can be, but the book frames them more as powerful opportunities for accelerated personal growth. Dramatically changing your environment forces you to adapt, confront your own assumptions and prejudices, and learn new skills rapidly.
Like the author's examples.
Right, learning things like Gaelic Irish, playing the flute, trying hurling in Ireland, tango in Argentina, kickboxing in Thailand. Using that free time and new location for skill acquisition and experience.
And volunteering abroad is presented as another way to not only fill time, but contribute meaningfully.
Yes, using the example of Robin Malinsky-Rummel's family, who spent months volunteering different places, building wheelchairs, rehabilitating animals, shepherding sea turtles. It's about finding fulfilling activity that goes beyond just personal leisure or skill building. It adds purpose.
The book also touches on mistakes that even the new rich, people who have achieved this freedom, can still fall into.
Yeah, common pitfalls. Things like reverting to micromanaging their VAs or employees instead of trusting the systems and rules they set up.
Not letting go.
Exactly. Or handling problems that others are actually paid to solve. Chasing low-value, high-maintenance customers just because they can. Constantly checking irrelevant email, falling back into old elimination-violating habits. And a big one. Failing to create clear boundaries between where you work and where you live, or relax, especially when working remotely.
Blurring the lines too much.
Right. And also, ignoring the importance of social rewards, or, conversely, surrounding yourself with negative or unsupportive people just out of habit.
The perspective throughout seems to be that your current job or project, whatever it is just a stepping stone, not the end-all be-all.
Precisely. Any rut you find yourself in is one you can get out of. Doubts aren't necessarily reasons to stop, but maybe signals that you need to take action or adjust your course. Don't get paralyzed by doubt.
There are some really interesting philosophical threads woven throughout the text as well, beyond the practical tactics.
Definitely. Like the Stoic idea from Seneca of rehearsing poverty, occasionally living very simply to remove the fear of losing material wealth.
Contrasting a scarcity mindset with an abundance one.
Right. or the view that adversity and money don't fundamentally change who you are, they just reveal or amplify your existing character. And the importance of learning to tune out critics who just don't understand or support your unconventional path. Not everyone will get it.
And specific ideas like minimizing karma debt by being wary of accepting large, unreciprocated favors.
And the idea that you don't have to recoup losses in the same way you incurred them, like you wouldn't try to win back gambling money by gambling more. If a business fails, you don't necessarily have to start the exact same type of business to make it back.
Okay, so finally, the book kind of circles back to practical implementation and reinforcing that core mindset shift.
Yeah, a bit of a recap of key rules and formulas. Set explicit rules for automation. Avoid postponing uncomfortable decisions. Deal with them quickly. Diligently batch tasks. Differentiate between activities that actually produce results versus those that are just enjoyable but maybe not productive.
And actively working to eliminate complaining. There was that 21-day bracelet experiment mentioned.
Right, becoming aware of and reducing negativity. It also reinforces the absolute importance of testing your assumptions and doing your homework up front. Like Ed Bird, testing market demand with that low-priced book ad before committing to manufacturing the real product. Don't just guess, test.
And that less is more principle pops up again in the business context.
Absolutely. For instance, deliberately limiting distribution channels for your product can sometimes increase profit margins and protect against price erosion, rather than trying to be everywhere.
And firing those high-maintenance, low-profit customers.
Yeah, that 80-20 applied to customers again. While scary, freeing up the time and energy spent on the demanding 80% who only bring 20% of the profit allows you to better serve the valuable 20%.
And finally, some practical tips for actually enabling the mobile lifestyle that liberation might bring.
Right, things like minimalist packing the buy-it-there method rather than hauling everything, having a settling fund of readily accessible cash for unexpected expenses when you first arrive somewhere new, checking health resources like the CDC before traveling, understanding practicalities like international electric adapters or phone access, often just by getting a cheap local SIM card upon arrival.
Using online resources for flights, accommodation, basic travel hacking stuff.
Yeah, specific sites like Orbitz, Kayak, Priceline Bidding, Hotel Chatter, Craigslist, Interhome are mentioned as tools for finding deals. And even a note on tax considerations like Form 2555EZ for U.S. citizens living abroad. It's about practical preparation for mobility.
And challenging yourself through those comfort challenges, whether it's saying no more often or trying to contact those difficult-to-reach people, that seems to be a constant theme for breaking through self-imposed limits.
It really is. I think the core takeaway from this deep dive looking at all these pieces is that the conventional script for work and life isn't the only option. And maybe it's not even the most effective one for living a rich, full life now, not just someday.
Yeah, but it requires letting go of some deeply ingrained assumptions, doesn't it? And being incredibly intentional, really deliberate about where you focus your time and energy.
Absolutely. We've covered a huge amount here, from dissecting that whole problem with the deferred life plan to the deal process, definition, elimination, automation, liberation, confronting the potential void after you free up time, and the practical steps for making it happen.
The message that comes through loud and clear is that the kind of freedom and lifestyle you might usually associate with, I don't know, retirement or maybe extreme wealth, it might be far more accessible than you think.
But it demands that radical shift in mindset and a real willingness to take unconventional action. It's not passive.
So, based on all this, here's a provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. What is one deeply held, realistic assumption about work or life that you currently hold on to, which might actually be preventing you from pursuing something that would genuinely excite you right now?
And following on from that, what is one tiny, maybe slightly scary, but concrete step you could take this week just to test that assumption?
Food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.